Some moments divide your life into before and after. For Maya, that moment came in a Boston pharmacy when her 6-year-old son was fighting for every breath. She'd counted the money 3 times already. $5. That's all that stood between her baby and the medicine he desperately needed. She'd crossed an ocean for a better life, survived a deadbeat ex, and crushing loneliness. But none of that mattered now. The pharmacist stared with impatient eyes, and Derek made that horrible gasping sound. Maya opened her mouth to beg, but before the words formed, a deep voice spoke behind her. "I'll cover it." 3 words that would save her son's life and change her world forever. The fluorescent lights of the 24-hour pharmacy buzzed overhead as Maya burst through the automatic doors. Her 6-year-old son, Derek, clutched against her chest. His small body shook with each wheezing breath, and the sound tore at her heart like broken glass. "Please, baby, just hold on," she whispered, her Tanzanian accent thick with fear as she rushed toward the pharmacy counter at the back of the store. The pharmacist, a middle-aged man with tired eyes, looked up from his computer screen. "Can I help you? My son needs his inhaler. He can't breathe properly." Maya's voice cracked as she gently set Derek down on a nearby chair. The boy's lips had started turning a faint blue color, and panic clawed at her throat. Name and date of birth? Derek Misangi, June 10th, 2019. She spelled out the last name quickly, her hands trembling as she dug through her worn purse for her wallet. The pharmacist typed slowly, his fingers moving across the keyboard like he had all the time in the world. Maya wanted to scream at him to hurry, but she bit her tongue. Getting angry wouldn't help Derek breathe easier. "All right, I've got the prescription here. Give me a few minutes to fill it." Those few minutes felt like hours. Maya knelt beside Derek, rubbing his back in small circles the way her mother used to do for her when she was sick back in Dar es Salaam. That felt like a lifetime ago, before she'd scraped together every shilling she had to buy a plane ticket to America, before she'd arrived in Boston with nothing but dreams and determination, before Derek's father had abandoned them both. "Here we go," the pharmacist finally said, sliding a small paper bag across the counter. "That'll be $85. Maya's stomach dropped to her feet. $85? But last month it was only $40. Insurance changed. New deductible." He said it as if he were reading the weather forecast, completely unmoved by the desperation in her eyes. She opened her wallet with shaking hands. One $5 bill stared back at her. It was all she had until Friday, when she got paid from her waitressing job. She'd already stretched her last paycheck to cover rent, electricity, and food. There was nothing left. "I only have $5 right now, but I get paid in 3 days. Can I please take the inhaler and come back to pay the rest? My son really needs it." The words tumbled out fast, desperate. The pharmacist's expression didn't change. "Store policy? Payment in full before medication is dispensed. Please, I'm begging you, look at him." She gestured toward Derek, whose breathing had become more labored. "He needs this now, not in 3 days. I'm sorry, but there's nothing I can do. Company policy?" Tears burned in Maya's eyes. She'd left everything behind in Tanzania to give her son a better life, worked 2 jobs to keep a roof over their heads, and now she couldn't even afford the medicine that would help him breathe. What kind of mother was she? "I'll clean your pharmacy, do extra shifts, anything. Please don't let my baby suffer like this. Ma'am, I've explained the policy. If you can't pay, I can't give you the medication." A deep voice cut through the conversation like a knife. "I'll cover it." Maya spun around, and her breath caught in her throat for an entirely different reason. The man standing behind her was tall, probably in his early 30s, with sharp Korean features and eyes so dark they looked like midnight. He wore a perfectly tailored black suit that probably cost more than 3 months of her rent, and his presence seemed to fill the entire space around him. Power radiated off him like heat from the sun. "Sir, you don't have to do that," Maya stammered, wiping quickly at her tears. "I know I don't have to." His English was perfect, barely touched by an accent. He pulled out a sleek black wallet and removed a credit card, placing it on the counter. "Ring it up." The pharmacist's entire attitude changed. "Yes, sir. Right away, sir." He practically tripped over himself processing the payment. Maya stared at this stranger who'd appeared like an answer to a prayer she hadn't even finished praying. "I'll pay you back, I promise. Just give me your name and number, and as soon as I get my paycheck, keep your money." His eyes moved to Derek, and something in his expression softened just slightly. "Take care of your son." The transaction beeped through, and the pharmacist handed over the receipt with a smile he definitely hadn't given Maya. She grabbed the medication bag with trembling hands, immediately opening it and helping Derek with his inhaler. The boy took 2 puffs, and within minutes, his breathing began to ease. "Thank you," Maya breathed, looking up at the stranger. "Thank you so much. You saved his life." The man's gaze lingered on her face for a moment, something unreadable flickering in those dark eyes. "What's your name?" "Maya. Maya Msangi. Sung Min." He didn't offer a last name. "How can I ever repay you, Sung Min?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "You just did. Seeing him breathe easier is enough." He glanced at his expensive watch. "You should get him home and rested." Before Maya could say anything else, Sung Min turned and walked toward the exit. She watched him go. This mysterious man in the perfect suit who'd spent $85 on strangers without blinking. Through the glass doors, she saw him climb into a sleek black car where another man in a dark suit sat in the driver's seat. The car pulled away smoothly, disappearing into the Boston night. "Mama, I feel better," Derek said softly, his color already returning to normal. "I know, baby. Me too." She gathered him into her arms, holding him close. But as she carried her son out of the pharmacy and towards the bus stop, Maya couldn't stop thinking about those dark eyes and the way her heart had skipped when Sung Min looked at her. She didn't know anything about him except his first name and the fact that he had money to throw around. She'd probably never see him again. She had no idea how wrong she was. 2 blocks away, Sung Min sat in the back of his car as his driver navigated the late-night streets. His right-hand man, Dae Won, glanced at him in the rearview mirror. "That was generous of you, boss. Since when do you play hero at pharmacies?" Sung Min didn't answer immediately. He was still thinking about the woman's face, the way desperation and fierce love for her son had burned in her brown eyes, the musical quality of her accent, the curve of her lips even as she'd been on the verge of tears. He'd built an empire in Boston through ruthlessness and calculated decisions, had ordered things done that would horrify most people, had blood on his hands that would never wash clean. But something about that moment in the pharmacy had cracked something open inside his chest. "Drive to the restaurant," was all he said. But even as they drove through the city, he, controlled from the shadows, couldn't shake the image of Maya from his mind. He'd memorized her name, the pharmacy location, everything. In his line of work, he'd learned to notice details, to catalog information that might be useful later. He told himself it was just good business to remember faces. He told himself the tightness in his chest meant nothing. He told himself he'd forget about her by morning. He was lying to himself, and somewhere deep down, he knew it. Maya Msangi had walked into that pharmacy and, without knowing it, walked straight into the most dangerous man in Boston's life. And nothing would ever be the same again. 2 weeks had crawled by since that night at the pharmacy, but Maya still thought about Sung Min every single day. She'd catch herself remembering the intensity in his eyes, or the way her skin had tingled when he'd looked at her. It was ridiculous. She'd spoken to the man for maybe 3 minutes total, and yet he'd somehow burned himself into her memory. "Table 7 needs refills, Maya," her manager called out, snapping her back to reality. She grabbed the water pitcher and wound through the expensive restaurant where she worked her evening shift. Russo's was the kind of place where appetizers cost what she used to make in a week back in Tanzania. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling. Soft piano music drifted through the air, and everyone spoke in hushed, refined tones. Maya had gotten the job here 3 months ago, and the tips were good enough that she'd been able to cut back to just 1 job instead of 2. She was refilling water glasses at table 7 when the hostess seated a new party in her section. Maya glanced over automatically to count how many menus they'd need, and her heart stopped beating. Sung Min sat at the round corner table with 4 other men, all wearing similar expensive suits. But while the other men looked around the restaurant with casual interest, Sung Min's eyes locked directly onto hers. Recognition flared in his gaze, followed by something else. Something that made her hand shake slightly as she poured water. "Maya, you okay?" the customer at table 7 asked, concerned. She looked down and realized she'd overfilled his glass. "I'm so sorry. Let me get a towel." By the time she'd cleaned up the small spill and finished with table 7, her palms were sweating. She smoothed down her black work dress and walked over to Sung Min's table, her professional smile firmly in place, even though her pulse was racing. "Good evening, gentlemen. Can I start you off with drinks?" "Maya," Sung Min said her name like he was tasting it, and the sound of it in his deep voice did strange things to her stomach. "I was hoping you'd be working tonight." The other men at the table exchanged glances, clearly surprised their boss knew their waitress by name. "You two know each other?" one of them asked. "We met briefly," Sung Min said, his eyes never leaving Maya's face. "How's your son?" The fact that he remembered Derek made something warm bloom in her chest. "He's doing great, thanks to you. I still owe you for that medication. I told you to keep your money." His tone left no room for argument. "But if you really want to repay me, have dinner with me. Tomorrow night, 8 o'clock. Maya's mouth went dry. Every rational part of her brain screamed that this was a bad idea. She didn't know this man. He clearly had money and power, which meant he probably had secrets, too. Getting involved with someone like him when she had a son to protect was foolish. But her heart was pounding, and she couldn't look away from those dark eyes that seemed to see straight through her. "I don't even know your last name," she said quietly. "Park. Sung Min Park." He pulled out a business card and wrote something on the back. "That's my personal number. Text me your address. I'll pick you up at 8. It wasn't really a question. It was an assumption that she'd say yes. That kind of confidence should have annoyed her, but instead, it sent a shiver down her spine. "I have to find a babysitter for Derek. So that's a yes?" A real smile crossed his face, transforming his features from merely handsome to absolutely devastating. "That's a maybe." She tried to sound firm, but her voice came out breathy. "I'll take it." He gestured to the menus. "Now, what do you recommend?" Maya made it through, taking their orders without dropping anything, which felt like a miracle given how aware she was of Sung Min's gaze following her every movement. When she brought out their food, his hand brushed hers as she set down his plate, and the brief contact sent electricity shooting up her arm. At the end of the meal, he left a $500 tip on a $200 bill. When she tried to protest, he simply stood, buttoned his suit jacket, and leaned in close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and masculine that made her head spin. "Text me, Maya. I'll be waiting." His breath was warm against her ear. And then he was gone, his men following him out of the restaurant like shadows. Maya stared at the business card in her hand for a long moment before tucking it into her apron pocket. She told herself she wouldn't text him. She told herself this was crazy. She told herself to forget about him. But that night, after she'd put Derek to bed and sat alone in her small apartment, she pulled out the card and stared at the number written in bold, confident handwriting. Her thumb hovered over her phone screen for 10 full minutes before she finally typed out a message. "This is Maya, 42, Chester Street, apartment 3B. His response came within 30 seconds. "I'll be there at 8. Wear something you feel beautiful in." The next evening, Maya changed outfits 4 times before settling on a simple red dress she'd bought on sale 2 years ago, but never had anywhere nice enough to wear it. She'd arranged for her neighbor, Mrs. Chen, to watch Derek, though the elderly woman had given her a knowing look that made Maya blush. At exactly 8 o'clock, there was a knock at her door. She took a deep breath, checked her reflection one more time, and opened it. Sung Min stood in her hallway in dark slacks and a crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows. Somehow, he looked even more attractive, slightly casual than he had in the full suit. He held a bouquet of white roses that probably cost more than her monthly, "You clean up pretty nice yourself." She accepted the flowers, trying to ignore how her hands trembled slightly. "Let me just put these in water." As she moved around her tiny kitchen looking for something to use as a vase, she was hyper-aware of him watching her. When she turned around, he was closer than she'd expected, and they stood there for a moment, the air between them crackling with tension. "We should go," she said softly, "before I lose my nerve." His hand came up to cup her cheek, his thumb brushing across her skin in a gentle caress. "Don't be nervous. I don't bite, unless you ask nicely." The words were teasing, but laced with heat that made her knees weak. He stepped back and offered his arm, and Maya took it, letting him lead her downstairs to where a sleek black car waited. The same driver from the pharmacy opened the back door for them. The restaurant Sung Min took her to was nothing like Russo's. This place was intimate and exclusive, the kind of establishment that didn't even have a sign outside. They were led to a private room on the rooftop, with a view of the entire Boston skyline glittering like diamonds against the night sky. "This is incredible," Maya breathed, moving to the glass railing to take it all in. Sung Min came to stand beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "I wanted somewhere we could talk without being interrupted." They sat at a small table set for 2, and over the most delicious food Maya had ever tasted, they talked. Really talked. Sung Min told her about coming to America at 17 with nothing but the clothes on his back and a determination to build something. He'd started from the bottom, worked brutal hours, learned the language and the culture, and slowly climbed his way up until he owned half of Boston's business interests. He left out the details of exactly what kind of businesses he owned, and Maya didn't push. She could guess that a man with his kind of power didn't get it by playing nice. But tonight she didn't want to think about that. In turn, she told him about Tanzania, about growing up in a small village where she'd walked 3 miles to school every day, about dreaming of something bigger, about Derek's father who'd promised her everything and disappeared the moment she got pregnant, about scraping together enough money for a plane ticket and arriving in Boston terrified but hopeful. "You're incredibly brave," Sung Min said, his eyes intense across the candlelight. "Leaving everything you knew to build a better life for your son." "I'm not brave. I'm just a mother doing what mothers do." "You're brave," he repeated firmly. "And you're beautiful. And I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since that night in the pharmacy." Maya's breath caught. I've been thinking about you too. The admission hung between them, honest and vulnerable. Sung-min reached across the table and took her hand, his fingers threading through hers. The touch was simple but intimate, and Maya felt it everywhere. After dinner, he drove her home himself, having dismissed his driver. They sat in the car outside her building, neither one wanting the night to end. "Can I see you again?" Sung-min asked. "Yes," he smiled, that devastating smile that made her forget every reason this was a bad idea. Then he got out and walked her to her door like a perfect gentleman, even though the heat in his eyes was anything but gentle. At her doorstep, he backed her gently against the door, one hand bracing beside her head, the other tilting her chin up. "I'm going to kiss you now," he said, giving her time to object. She didn't. His lips met hers softly at first, testing, exploring. But when Maya sighed and melted into him, the kiss deepened. His hand slid into her hair, angling her head as his mouth moved over hers with increasing hunger. She gripped his shirt, pulling him closer, and felt his groan rumble through his chest. The kiss was everything. It was heat and desire and promise all wrapped together. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Maya's lips felt swollen, and her entire body was humming. "I should go inside," she whispered, though she made no move to pull away. "You should." But he kissed her again, slower this time, savoring it. When he finally stepped back, his eyes were dark with want. "Tomorrow, dinner again. Say yes, Maya." "Yes." She watched him walk back to his car, and as he drove away, she touched her lips, still feeling the ghost of his kiss. She was falling for him fast and hard, and somewhere in the back of her mind, a warning bell was ringing. But for the first time in years, Maya felt alive. She felt desired. She felt like more than just a struggling single mother. And she wasn't ready to give that up. Not yet. 3 months had passed since that first dinner, and Maya's life had transformed into something she barely recognized. Sung-min was intoxicating, addictive in the way he'd woven himself into every part of her existence. They saw each other almost every day now, stolen hours between her work shifts and his mysterious business meetings that he still didn't fully explain. She'd stopped asking too many questions. Deep down, she knew the answers would complicate everything, and she wasn't ready for complications, not when being with him felt this good. "Checkmate," Derek announced proudly, moving his queen across the chessboard set up on Maya's coffee table. Sung-min studied the board with exaggerated shock. "How did you get so good? I taught you this game only a month ago. I'm a natural genius," Derek said matter-of-factly, making both adults laugh. Maya watched from the kitchen as Sung-min ruffled her son's hair, the gesture so natural and affectionate, it made her heart ache. Derek had taken to Sung-min immediately, and the feeling was clearly mutual. The dangerous businessman who commanded respect and fear from grown men became someone entirely different around her 6-year-old, patient and playful, and surprisingly gentle. "All right, genius, it's bedtime," Maya called out. "Go brush your teeth." Derek groaned but obeyed, giving Sung-min a high five on his way to the bathroom. Once the sound of running water filled the apartment, Sung-min crossed to Maya in the kitchen, sliding his arms around her waist from behind and pressing a kiss to her neck. "He's a good kid," he murmured against her skin. "He thinks you hung the moon." She leaned back into his solid warmth. "I'm starting to think the same thing." She felt him smile against her neck. "Dangerous thoughts, Maya." "You're one to talk about dangerous." His arms tightened around her. Over the past months, she'd learned more about the real Sung-min Park. He ran what he called an import-export business. But Maya wasn't naive. The armed men who followed him everywhere, the expensive cars, The way people stepped aside when he walked into a room, it all painted a clear picture. Sung Min was involved in things that existed in the shadows, things that would horrify most regular people. But he'd also shown her a tenderness she'd never known. He treated her like something precious, listened when she talked about her dreams of going to nursing school someday, showed up with groceries when her paycheck was stretched thin, and paid Derek's school fees without being asked. And when they were alone, when he touched her, kissed her, made love to her in the darkness of his penthouse, she felt like the only woman in the world. After Derek was asleep, Sung Min drove them to his place, a luxury penthouse overlooking Boston Harbor. The moment the elevator doors closed behind them, his mouth found hers in a hungry kiss that had been building all evening. They barely made it to the bedroom. Later, tangled in his expensive sheets with her head on his chest, Maya traced lazy patterns on his skin. "Tell me something true," she whispered. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. Nothing. I don't know." She propped herself up on one elbow to look at him. "Sometimes I feel like I'm living in a dream, and I'm terrified of waking up." Sung Min's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. "This is real, Maya. What I feel for you is real. What do you feel?" He was quiet for a long moment, and she thought maybe he wouldn't answer. Then he said, "I've spent my entire adult life building power, creating something from nothing. I thought that was enough. But then you walked into that pharmacy, and suddenly everything I'd built felt empty. You make me want things I never thought I could have. A normal life, a family, a future that's about more than just survival and control." Her heart swelled so big it hurt. "I love you," she breathed, the words escaping before she could stop them. His eyes darkened with emotion. "I love you too, more than I've ever loved anything." They made love again, slower this time, tender and deep, expressing with their bodies what words couldn't quite capture. Afterward, wrapped in his arms, Maya felt safe and cherished and completely content. She had no idea that at that very moment, someone was watching Sung Min's building from across the street, taking photographs, gathering information, planning something that would shatter their perfect bubble. The next morning, Sung Min sat in his office in a high-rise downtown, listening to Dae-won deliver his daily report. His second-in-command stood on the other side of the heavy oak desk, his expression grim. "Viktor Kozlov has been asking questions about you," Dae-won said, "specifically about your personal life." Sung Min's jaw tightened. Viktor was a Russian mob boss who'd been trying to muscle into Boston's territory for the past year. So far, Sung Min had kept him at bay through a combination of strategic alliances and carefully calculated shows of strength. But Viktor was ambitious and ruthless, a dangerous combination. "What kind of questions?" "About the woman you've been seeing. About her son. He knows where she lives, where she works, and what time Derek gets out of school." Cold fury flooded Sung Min's veins. "Put extra security on Maya's building. I want someone to watch Derek's school at all times. If Viktor so much as breathes in their direction, I want to know about it. Boss, with all due respect, maybe it's time to end this relationship. Viktor knows about her because you've been seen together. You're exposing her to danger just by being with her." Sung Min slammed his hand on the desk, the sharp crack echoing through the office. "I'm not ending anything. Maya and Derek are mine to protect. Increase security and send Viktor a message. If he touches them, I'll bury him so deep they'll never find the body." Dae-won nodded, clearly having expected that response. "There's something else. The elders want to meet with you. They've heard about Maya, too, and they're not happy. They think she's a distraction, that she makes you vulnerable. The elders can go to hell. They're talking about calling a vote. They could remove you as head of the organization if they decide you're compromised. Sung-min stood, walking to the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. Everything he saw, he'd fought for. Every building, every street, every business relationship had been earned through blood and sacrifice. He'd given everything to build this empire, and now the same people who'd benefited from his leadership wanted to tear him down because he'd fallen in love. "Set up the meeting," he said finally. "I'll handle the elders." But even as he said it, he knew the truth. In his world, love was seen as weakness, and weakness got you killed. That evening, he took Maya to a private suite at an exclusive hotel. He'd told her he wanted to spend the whole night together, had arranged for Mrs. Chen to keep Derek overnight. But the real reason was that he needed to feel her close, needed to remind himself why he was willing to risk everything. They ordered room service and ate on the balcony, watching the sun set over the city. Maya wore one of his shirts and nothing else, her long legs tucked under her as she sipped wine and laughed at something he'd said. She was so beautiful it actually hurt to look at her sometimes. "You're quiet tonight," she observed. "Everything okay?" He couldn't tell her about Victor's threats or the elders' ultimatum. Couldn't burden her with the knowledge that loving him might get her killed. So instead he pulled her into his lap, burying his face in her neck and just breathing her in. "I'm perfect now," he lied. She turned in his arms to straddle him, her hands framing his face. "Sung-min, whatever it is, you can tell me. I'm not some fragile thing that needs to be protected from reality. I know you're not fragile. You're the strongest person I've ever met." He kissed her deeply, trying to pour all his fear and love and desperation into it. "But sometimes I wish I could give you a normal life. A normal man who doesn't have enemies and secrets. I don't want normal. I want you." They made love on the balcony as the stars came out, then moved inside to the bed where they tangled together again and again, as if they could somehow fuse into one person if they just held each other tight enough. In the early hours of the morning, with Maya asleep in his arms, Sung-min stared at the ceiling and made a decision. He would find a way out. He'd built this empire, and he could find a way to leave it behind. For her. For Derek. For the family he desperately wanted to have. He just needed time to figure out how to do it without getting them all killed. But time, as it turned out, was the one thing he didn't have. The next 2 weeks were tense. Sung-min had doubled security around Maya and Derek without telling her why, just saying he wanted to make sure they were safe. She'd accepted it without too much questioning, trusting him in a way that made his chest tight with guilt. She deserved the truth, but the truth might send her running, and he was too selfish to risk losing her. He'd met with the elders, faced their criticism and their demands that he end his relationship with Maya. He'd refused, told them he was looking for a way to step back from active leadership while maintaining their financial interests. They'd been skeptical, but agreed to give him 6 months to figure it out. 6 months to find a successor, to transition power, to secure his exit. It wasn't enough time, but it would have to be. On a Tuesday afternoon, Sung-min was in a meeting with his accountants when his phone rang. Maya's name flashed on the screen and he almost let it go to voicemail, but something made him answer. "Hey, beautiful. Can I call you back in—" "He's gone." Maya's voice was pure panic, high and terrified and broken. "Derek's gone. They took him." Everything inside Sung-min went cold. "What happened? Where are you? The school just called." "I'm here now. They said 2 men came and told the office they were authorized to pick him up, that I'd called and approved it. But I didn't. I would never. The school released him, and now he's gone and—" Her voice dissolved into sobs. "Listen to me, Maya. Stay at the school. I'm sending men to get you right now. Don't talk to anyone. Don't go anywhere. Do you understand?" "Who would take my baby?" she cried. "Please, Sung-min, please find him. I promise you I will get him back." He was already moving, grabbing his jacket and gun, barking orders to Dae-won, who'd appeared in the doorway. "Stay put, I'm coming." He hung up and turned to Dae-won. "Victor has Derek. Get everyone together, every man we have, and find out where that bastard is hiding." Minutes later, Maya was in his car, shaking so hard her teeth chattered. Sung-min held her hand as Dae-won drove them to a safe house, his mind racing through scenarios and contingencies. This was his fault. He'd known Victor was dangerous, had known the man would strike at his weakness. And he hadn't protected them well enough. Maya's phone rang. Unknown number. Sung-min answered it on speaker. "Mr. Park." Victor's Russian accent was thick and mocking. "I believe I have something that belongs to your woman. If you hurt him, I'll kill you so slowly you'll beg for death," Sung-min said, his voice deadly calm. "No need for threats. This is a simple business. You have the territory I want. We make a trade. The boy for your entire Boston operation." "Done." "Tell me where and when." Victor laughed. "Not so fast. I want the woman too. She delivers you to me, alone, at the old shipping warehouse at the docks. Pier 47. 2 hours. She comes alone, or the boy dies. You come with your army, and the boy dies. You try anything clever, the boy dies. Understood?" "I understand." 2 hours, Mr. Park. Don't be late." The line went dead. Maya was staring at him with huge, terrified eyes. "What do we do? You're not going anywhere. I'll handle this. He said I had to bring you. If I don't, he'll kill Derek. And if you do, he'll kill all 3 of us. Victor wants me dead and my organization in chaos. He's not going to let any of us walk away from this." "I don't care!" Maya shouted, tears streaming down her face. "That's my son. I have to try." Sung-min pulled her into his arms, holding her as she broke down. "I know, baby, I know, and we will get him back, but not by walking into a death trap." He looked at Dae-won over her head. "Call everyone. We have 2 hours to plan this perfectly." But Maya wasn't listening anymore. While Sung-min was strategizing with his men, while they were pulling up blueprints of the warehouse and discussing approach vectors, she made a decision. Derek was everything to her. She'd crossed an ocean for him, worked herself to exhaustion for him, sacrificed everything for him. She wasn't going to let strategy and careful planning waste precious time while her baby was scared and alone with dangerous men. When Sung-min stepped out to take a phone call, Maya slipped out the back door of the safe house. She took one of the cars from the garage, keys left carelessly on a hook, and drove toward the docks with her heart pounding. She had to save her son, even if it costs her everything. At the warehouse, Victor's men grabbed her the moment she stepped out of the car. They dragged her inside the massive, dark building that smelled of oil and salt water. Derek was tied to a chair in the center of the space, and when he saw her, he started crying. "Mama, I'm here, baby. It's going to be okay." She tried to run to him, but the men held her back. Victor appeared from the shadows, a tall man with cold blue eyes and a smile that made her skin crawl. "Where is Park? He's coming. I called him from the road. He'll be here." "You were supposed to bring him. I didn't think he'd come if I was with him, but he'll come for Derek." "I know he will." Victor studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Smart woman. Tie her up." They bound her to a chair next to Derek. Maya kept talking to her son, telling him everything would be fine, that Sung-min would save them, even though terror clawed at her throat. 20 minutes later, the warehouse doors burst open. Sung-min strode in alone, his hands raised to show he wasn't armed, though Maya could see the fury burning in his eyes. "I'm here. Let them go. Did you really come alone?" Victor laughed. "How romantic. And how stupid." That's when Maya saw the red dots of laser sights dancing across Sung-min's chest. Snipers, hidden in the rafters. This was an execution, not a negotiation. "No," she screamed. "Please, we did what you asked." "You did," Victor agreed. "But I'm afraid I lied about the part where anyone survives." He raised his gun, pointing it directly at Sung Min's heart. Everything seemed to happen in slow motion. Maya screamed. Derek cried. Victor's finger tightened on the trigger. Then the warehouse exploded into chaos. Windows shattered as Sung Min's men crashed through them on ropes. Gunfire erupted from every direction. Victor's snipers started shooting, but they were being taken out by counter-snipers positioned outside. Sung Min dove for cover, producing a gun from somewhere, and returning fire. Daewon appeared next to Maya and Derek, cutting their bonds with swift efficiency. "Stay down!" he shouted over the gunfire. But Maya's eyes were locked on Sung Min, who was fighting his way across the warehouse toward them. She saw Victor aim at Sung Min's back, saw the gun, saw everything with crystal clarity. "Sung Min!" she screamed in warning. He turned, but not fast enough. The bullet caught him high in the chest, spinning him around. He went down hard, blood blooming across his white shirt like a crimson flower. "No!" Maya's scream was raw and broken. She tried to run to him, but Daewon held her back as more gunfire erupted. Through the chaos, she watched as Daewon's men converged on Victor. The Russian tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. One of Sung Min's men, a huge guy named Chang Ho, tackled Victor to the ground and beat him bloody. Then it was over. The warehouse fell silent except for the ringing in everyone's ears. Maya broke free from Daewon and ran to where Sung Min lay on the concrete, blood pooling beneath him. "No, no, no," she sobbed, pressing her hands to the wound, trying to stop the bleeding. "Don't you dare die on me! Don't you dare!" His eyes fluttered open, unfocused and pained. "Maya! Derek! We're fine, we're both fine. You saved us. Now save yourself. Stay with me." "Love you," he whispered, blood flecking his lips. "So much. I love you too. Please, Sung Min, please hold on." Sirens wailed in the distance. Daewon was on the phone, screaming at someone to send ambulances. Maya held Sung Min's head in her lap, her tears falling onto his pale face, and prayed harder than she'd ever prayed in her life. The paramedics arrived and had to physically pull her away from him. She watched them load him into the ambulance, watched the doors, close, and felt her whole world shatter. Derek clung to her, both of them crying, as Daewon drove them to the hospital. In the emergency room waiting area, Maya sat with Derek, sleeping against her shoulder, and blood all over her clothes. Sung Min's blood. She stared at the wall and waited for someone to tell her if the man she loved was going to live or die. Daewon sat nearby, his phone ringing constantly with updates. Victor was dead, killed during the fight. His organization was in shambles. Sung Min's position was secure. None of it mattered if Sung Min didn't survive. Hours passed. Derek woke up and fell back asleep. The sun started to rise outside the windows. Finally, a doctor appeared. "Are you family?" he asked. "Yes," Maya lied, without hesitation. "I'm his fiancée." The doctor's expression was grave. "The bullet missed his heart by less than an inch. He's lost a lot of blood, and the next 24 hours are critical. But he's young and strong. If he makes it through tonight, his chances are good. Can I see him? He's in recovery. Give us another hour to get him settled in the ICU. Then you can sit with him." When they finally let her into his room, Maya pulled a chair next to his bed and took his hand. Machines beeped steadily, monitoring his vitals. He looked so pale, so still, so unlike the powerful man she knew. "You listen to me, Sung Min Park," she whispered fiercely. "You don't get to save my life and then leave me. You don't get to make me fall in love with you and then die. You promised me forever, and I'm holding you to that. So you fight. You hear me? You fight to come back to me." His hand was limp in hers, but she held on tight, and she waited. The machines beeped steadily, a rhythm that Maya had memorized over the past 36 hours. She hadn't left Sung Min's bedside except when the nurses forced her to, hadn't slept more than 20 minutes at a time, hadn't eaten anything except the crackers Dae-won brought her. Her hand stayed locked around Sung Min's, as if she could somehow anchor him to this world through sheer force of will. Derek was being cared for by Mrs. Chen, who'd brought him to visit twice. Seeing his mother covered in blood had traumatized the boy, but seeing Sung Min alive, even unconscious, had helped. Derek had climbed carefully onto the hospital bed and whispered, "Please wake up. Mama needs you. I need you too." Now it was late on the second night, and Maya's eyes burned with exhaustion. She was watching Sung Min's face, looking for any sign of change when his fingers twitched in her hand. Her head snapped up. "Sung Min?" His eyelids fluttered. Slowly, painfully, they opened. His dark eyes were cloudy with medication, but they focused on her face. "Maya," he rasped, his voice barely audible. "Oh, thank God!" She was crying again, pressing kisses to his hand. "You're awake. You're really awake." "Derek. Safe. He's fine. You saved us both." She reached up to brush his hair back from his forehead. "Don't ever scare me like that again." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "I'll try." The doctor came in, checked Sung Min's vitals, and declared it a miracle. "You should be dead, Mr. Park. Whatever you're living for must be pretty important." Sung Min's eyes never left Maya's face. "She is." Over the next week, he healed faster than the doctors expected. Maya was there every day, and when he was strong enough, she helped him walk the hospital corridors, his arm around her shoulders, taking slow, careful steps. They talked about everything that had happened, about Victor and the violence and the blood. But mostly they talked about the future. "I'm done," Sung Min told her on the 5th day, sitting up in his hospital bed with significantly more strength. "With all of it, the organization, the violence, the whole life, I'm out. Can you really just walk away?" "I can, and I am." Victor's death changed things. The other organizations are nervous, worried I'll come after them next. The elders have agreed to let me step down peacefully. Dae-won will take over as head. I keep my legitimate businesses, but I'm out of the rest. Maya's heart soared with hope. "Really? You mean it?" "I almost died, Maya. And in that moment when I was lying on that warehouse floor bleeding out, all I could think about was that I'd never get to marry you, never get to grow old with you, never get to see Derek graduate or have more children or build the life I wanted with you." He took her hand, pressing it against his chest where his heart beat strong and steady. "I don't want power anymore. I don't want an empire. I just want you." She kissed him, tender and careful of his injuries, tasting salt from both their tears. 2 months later, Sung Min had fully recovered. True to his word, he'd stepped down from his position, handing everything over to Dae-won in a transition that had been surprisingly smooth. There had been some violence, some challenges from rivals who saw the leadership change as an opportunity, but Dae-won had handled it all with brutal efficiency. The organization was in good hands. Sung Min sold his penthouse and most of his expensive cars. He kept enough wealth to be comfortable, invested heavily in legitimate businesses, and focused on building a different kind of life. He'd bought a house in a quiet neighborhood in Philadelphia, far enough from Boston to feel like a fresh start, but close enough that Dae-won could visit. It was a real house, with a yard and a tire swing, and neighbors who waved hello. The kind of place where Derek could ride his bike, and Maya could plant flowers. The kind of place that felt like home. On a perfect autumn Saturday, Sung Min took Maya and Derek to a park near their new house. The trees were blazing with red and gold leaves, and the air smelled like wood smoke and possibility. They'd been in Philadelphia for 3 weeks, and every day felt like unwrapping a gift. Normal dinners around a kitchen table, movie nights on the couch, homework help, and bedtime stories. The quiet, beautiful, mundane moments that Sung-min had never thought he'd get to have. Derek was playing on the swings, his laughter ringing out across the park. Maya sat on a bench watching him, her face peaceful and content in a way that made Sung-min's chest ache with love. He sat down next to her, taking her hand. "I have something for you. If it's another ridiculously expensive gift, I'm going to get mad. We talked about this. It's not that kind of gift." He stood and pulled her to her feet, then dropped to one knee right there in the middle of the park. Maya's hands flew to her mouth. "Sung-min, Maya Misangi, you walked into my life when I needed saving and didn't even know it. You showed me what real strength looks like, what real love feels like, what it means to fight for something that actually matters. You and Derek are my whole world." He pulled out a ring, a simple gold band with a single diamond that caught the autumn sunlight. "I want to spend every day for the rest of my life making you happy. Will you marry me?" Derek had abandoned the swings and come running over. "Say yes, Mama, please say yes." Maya was crying and laughing at the same time. "Yes, of course, yes." Sung-min slid the ring onto her finger and stood, pulling her into his arms and kissing her deeply while Derek cheered and random park visitors applauded. When they broke apart, all three of them were grinning like fools. "Can I call you Dad now?" Derek asked Sung-min. Sung-min knelt to the boy's level. "I would be honored if you called me Dad." Derek launched himself into Sung-min's arms, and Maya wrapped her arms around both of them, this little family that had formed in the most unlikely way. The wedding was small, held in a garden on a crisp November afternoon. Daewon stood as Sung-min's best man, looking uncomfortable in a formal suit but smiling genuinely. Mrs. Chen cried happy tears. A few other friends gathered to witness as Maya walked down the aisle in a simple white dress, Derek walking beside her ready to give her away. When Sung-min saw her, his eyes went bright with emotion. She was so beautiful. But more than that, she was his wife, his partner, his future. They exchanged vows they'd written themselves. Maya promised to love him through the nightmares that still came sometimes, through the adjustment to normal life, through whatever challenges lay ahead. Sung-min promised to cherish her, protect her, and build a life worthy of her trust and love. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, their kiss was sweet and deep and full of promise. At the small reception afterward, they danced under string lights while soft music played. Sung-min held Maya close, swaying gently, feeling more at peace than he'd ever felt in his entire life. "I have something to tell you," Maya whispered against his ear. "What's that, Mrs. Park?" She pulled back to look at him, her eyes shining. "I'm pregnant." For a moment, Sung-min couldn't breathe. Really? About 8 weeks along?" Joy exploded through him, so intense it was almost painful. He lifted her off her feet and spun her around, laughing, and Maya laughed too, holding on to his shoulders. When he set her down, he cupped her face in his hands. "I love you so much. You and Derek, and this baby. You're everything I never knew I needed. I love you too, my dangerous man who turned out to have the softest heart." They kissed again, and around them, their small group of friends and family applauded. Derek ran up and hugged both their legs, and Sung-min scooped him up into their embrace. That night, after the celebration had ended and Derek was asleep in his new bedroom, Sung-min and Maya lay in bed in their new house, her head on his chest, his hand resting protectively on her still flat stomach. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked quietly. "The power, the control, the old life?" He was quiet for a moment, considering. "No, I miss the simplicity of it sometimes, knowing my place and my purpose, but I don't miss the violence or the constant threat or the emptiness. This is better. This is everything. Even the PTA meetings and grocery shopping and all the boring parts of normal life, especially those parts." He kissed the top of her head. "I spent so many years surviving, fighting, building something that could never really be mine. Now I get to actually live. With you, with our family. That's not boring. That's a miracle." Maya tilted her head up to kiss him, and the kiss deepened into something more. They made love slowly, carefully, celebrating their new beginning with gentle touches and whispered words of love. Afterward, wrapped in each other's arms, they talked about the future. About the baby coming in the spring. About Derek starting at his new school, where nobody knew anything about his dad's past. About Maya enrolling in community college to finally pursue that nursing degree she'd always dreamed of. About birthday parties and holidays, and the gloriously mundane details of building a life together. "We made it," Maya whispered as sleep started to claim them both. "We actually made it." "We did." Sung-min held her tighter. "And I promise you, Maya, I'm never letting go. This is our forever." Outside, the Philadelphia night was quiet and peaceful. Inside, a former crime boss and a brave woman from Tanzania slept peacefully, their lives intertwined, their future bright with possibility. They'd both traveled impossible distances, faced unthinkable dangers, and lost so much along the way. But they'd found each other, and that made everything worth it. In the end, it wasn't power or money or control that mattered. It was love. It was family. It was the simple joy of waking up next to the person who made you whole. It was the knowledge that no matter what storms came, you'd weather them together. Sung-min and Maya had learned that lesson the hard way. But now, finally, they got to live it. And they would spend the rest of their lives grateful for the night when a desperate mother only had $5 and a dangerous man decided to help. That moment in the pharmacy had changed everything. It had saved Derek's life that night, but in the end, it had saved all three of them. Thanks for staying until the end of Maya and Sung-min's incredible story. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications because we've got more heart-stopping romances coming your way. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from and what kind of love story you want to see next.